Well, it's Friday. Sorry if I sound a little funky. We had we've had wildfires going on forever, and then so it was terribly smoky, and then we had actually last Sunday we had a blizzard, 14 inches of snow, and it put a damper on a lot of the fires, but now most of the snow is melting, and so that means we're getting all kinds of weird, like pollens and dust, and I've been sneezing all morning. So, it's be really interesting. Let's wrist check. Okay, wrist check. This is a really special piece, actually. I've wanted one of these for years, but I never wanted to invest the money needed in order to pick one up. This is an early 1970s Omega Seamaster 176 .003 is the reference. These are pretty cool. This one I got in a deal that I did with Larry over there at Uncle Seiko. He and I have been friends for a long time, and he had sent this off to have to Hong Kong to have end links made for this model, and the people who had the factory that had this did all kinds of crazy damage, and so I bought it from him, and it had been unrestored, and I restored it completely. It still has some of the case damage that factory did, but it looks better, and I fully serviced it. These were among Omega's first automatic chronographs. This is it's a Lamania movement that Omega called 1040, and it's pretty cool. It has some neat features. Right here, this little blue circle here with the arrow, that's a 24-hour indicator in place of a day wheel. I mean, a lot of times you'd have it like at the day over here, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But this uses that same technology, but it uses it to be a 24-hour indicator. The other cool thing about this one is that instead of having a little minute counter hand in a separate register, it's actually the minute counter is that winged hand underneath here. And what happens, this is an unusual caliber, it actually has a friction clutch. So right now, they're underneath this, around the cannon pinion, there's sort of this friction donut that's sitting there. And there are two arms that are holding it firm so it doesn't rotate. But the second you go start, this minute counter hand is locked in with the actual minute hand, so it records the minutes, but these two hands will move together. And then you've got this one right here. This is pulling power on the calendar side off of the top of the mainspring, like a Seiko 6138, almost exactly the same. No, it's exactly the same technology. There's a friction slip gear on the top of the barrel, and that interacts now with this. Its stop lever has been pulled off, and so now it goes, and you got your running seconds is right there. And it's a date feature. Really, really cool. Beautiful movement, as you saw at the beginning. Anyway, and these are hard to make bracelets for, hard to get bracelets for. But this is the bracelet to my Seiko sprocket, 7T327D119. 7T327019. I remember Saul Brook was the one who told me that these end links will fit onto a 6309 diver. Well, I noticed that a 6309 diver end link set was in many ways good for this, but it was too big and came out too far. Then I remembered the sprocket, and they dropped right on. So that's a solid stainless. So yeah, I've got a Seiko bracelet on this Omega, but whatever. Anyway, you can see the minute counters doing its thing there, locked in with the minute hand. Just like that. Okay, like I said, I'm very happy with it. I need to research the original bracelets and hopefully come up with an option. I have some ideas. If somebody has a suggestion for a 22 millimeter strap that tapers strongly, a vintage chronograph strap, like I don't want a big fat straight one. I hate straight straps. But if anybody knows of a nicely made taper from 22 down to like 16 millimeters, let me know. Oof, sunny. I tell you, the fires last week. It was as dark. We had all the lights on at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It was wild. Okay, this is a very long question from Mr. James Duffy of the Sandwich Time channel. Now, I almost feel bad about reading this question that he took all this time to write up, because I really don't have any answers. There's a lot of this stuff that I don't understand, but maybe if I read it and somebody out there in the world knows the answer, they can respond, and then I can disseminate that information. The thing is I have no problem saying when I don't know something, because I hope that we find somebody who does, and who's actually done the research and can give us the answer, and then we everybody gets to learn, and I think it's awesome. Hello, Spencer and Sabrina. She says hi. She read this question. I was upstairs doing something, and she grabbed this from me and read it. So she says hello. I've been trying to dispel the myths about the Seiko J and made in Japan models for years. It was my understanding that J models, made in Japan models, and JDM models are slightly different things with an annoying bit of crossover. Some regions strictly require the country of origin on imported products. Because Seikos are Japanese products, they get the J variant with made on Japan on the dial, even if they are manufactured elsewhere. Similarly, a subset of these regions also require the joule count on the dial due to regulations on importing precious materials, hence that is sometimes included. If this is true, J models and made in Japan models are not necessarily made in Japan or JDM. It's very interesting. As far as I know, the only definitive signs a watch is JDM and intended to be sold within Japan are a Japanese kanji day wheel, which differs from the Chinese wheel. Chinese wheel is just like 1 for 1, 2 strokes for 2, blah blah blah. And that it is new old stock with Japanese tags and other materials. I think that's a good bet, but I don't know. This could be complicated by the possibility of actual JDM models not being manufactured in Japan, just sold there with their old model numbers and have an alternate day wheels or something other than Japanese kanji. As far as I know, the only definitive signs of a watch that is manufactured in Japan, not necessarily sold in Japan, but made there, actually made there. A Daini or Sua logo on the dial or caseback. Only Japan on the dial and or caseback and not Japan movement. It is a Grand Seiko, King Seiko, or Crador model, and its serial number and or its serial numbers before a particular year. So those again, Daini or Sua logo, dial or caseback, only Japan on the dial and or caseback, not Japan movement. Grand Seiko, King Seiko, or Crador, and or its serial numbers before a particular year. My question is any of this incorrect? There's something about the Daini and the Sua logos. You do see those on watches. I've seen those on watches that were not made in Japan. I've seen more often with Daini, but I definitely have seen both for watches that clearly were not marked Japan or made in Japan. If it's a Grand Seiko, King Seiko, or Crador, I would assume that it was made in Japan. I could be wrong, but I believe that's the case. I'm not sure about only Japan on the dial. And its serial numbers before a particular year, absolutely. That, yes, I personally ascribe to that view. that basically until, because we know that the production for like the 6309s moved to the Hong Kong plant starting in 1981. Like I have the Hong Kong Sua, and that one is everything that says classic Sua on it. It has all the standard markings for one made in Japan, like the earlier ones, but it says made assembled from Japanese parts in Hong Kong. So that was the transition. But so if I see any 6309 or 7548 or 7549 or whatever, I'm going to assume that if it's a 1980 or earlier, that it's one of the Japanese ones. Something I don't know. How does that apply to Seiko 7549 professional divers, like a golden tuna? Was the golden tuna production ever shifted out of Japan? Because I think of things like that as being borderline Grand Seiko, something like that. Super sorry for the long question. Maybe this is better suited for a separate segment, not in the Friday Q&A. Thank you for any insight you might have on this. I don't have any insight, really, but if anybody else knows the answers to this question, please let me know. And this entire thing, maybe I'll put it in the comments so people can read it. DJ Scream 514. I watch these videos exclusively during Colorado Fun Time. Well, I tell you, Colorado Fun Time makes everything funner. No, isn't it interesting? You figure just a second ago, it feels like to me anyway, that, people smoking weed was something that kids did at the park in the old gazebo that nobody uses anymore, or something like that, or people who had serious medical problems that that require CBD that's going to help them with seizures or shakes or something else like this. And now it's like we live in a pretty normal suburban neighborhood, right? And you go take a walk down the way. These houses aren't rentals really, and you just walk through a cloud every now and then. It smells like a Dead concert. And that's the way that it is. And it looks like it's going to be, I bet you anything, it's going to be legalized completely, assuming that we have a control change this coming Tuesday, which is, of course, Election Day in the United States. So, buddy, light up, sit back, enjoy yourself. Tom N. Hi, Spencer. My opinion on the faded plastic is that talking about the indicator rings and 6139s, Pogues. My opinion on the faded plastic is that the pigment is gone for good due to UV and or oxidation, and what you're seeing is the bacon grease effect. I entirely agree, because what your colors are going to be chemical compounds and strings, and the thing with UV is it comes in, it's powerful, has a lot of energy, and it breaks those compounds apart. And so in doing so, instead of having, your ketone ring that makes yellow, that breaks it up, and then it becomes a different color. And so that's the way that it's going. Let's see. Regarding 6139 crystals, I recently watched a Vintage Time Australia video where the speaker, Adrian Selleck, called the crystal on the 6139 7080 acrylic. Really? I thought all 6138 and 6139s had hard lux. Oh, no. There's a whole number, like the 6139 8020 racing. Hang on. Where is that? Where is it? Aha. Okay. Yeah, a lot of the little ones, if they don't have an indicator ring, they can easily be acrylic. So here you are, 6139 8020 racing. That's an acrylic domed crystal. And the 7080s, those are the octagonal ones. They're really cool, actually. You don't really see them that often. They're usually beaten to death. But if you ever see them nice and fresh and clean, they're really actually quite a handsome watch. They're nice looking. My favorite variant is there's like one with like a silver champagne dial there, and if you get it with a chronograph hand is unfaded, they're pretty. But yeah, there it is, acrylic. This is just a standard T ring, tension ring. Pop it in and there you go. I don't know why Seiko did that, but they did. Casey Martorella Taurus. I have this watch, 7006 dress watch. Can I dip it in the pool? It says water resistant, but can you explain, please? Okay, those dress watches, the 7000, that's like a little like standard dress watch. So it's got a pressed in acrylic crystal. It's got a single O-ring, small O-ring gasket on the crown, and it's got a flat gasket on the back. Seiko's case designs are excellent. I would not trust one of those anywhere near immersion, period. If the case has been completely rebuilt and it is clean and there's no pitting on the sealing surfaces and it has all new seals, I would consider it to probably be what it was originally intended for, 50 meters, 70 meters, something like that, which Seiko considers, and certainly I consider, at best splash proof. Not immersion, absolutely. I would never take a water like that and watch like that into a pool. It's just you're asking for it to die. Splash resistant is, in an emergency, maybe it'll save you, but it's not designed to be depended on. And it is, it's one of the things too where just being in the water is one factor, but the next factor is that if you move under the water, it vastly you can get pressure spikes from the movement of the water, and that pressure spike can be enough to go over the pressure experienced at 50 meters or 70 meters or whatever, and then you get water pushed in, and yeah, I wouldn't take that thing anywhere near water. Shredder 1. Hi Spencer, I hope you're well. So far. I have a question for a future mail call. I got a Seiko Kinetics Sports 200 5M430A40 or 0 Pepsi diver about 16 years ago, which stopped running just after the warranty expired. I contacted Seiko for repair and was quoted more than the watch cost to repair it. I put it in its original box and left it in a drawer for 16 years. Recently, I had it cleaned, serviced. It's in mint condition. It's rarely used, and I will never part with it. My question is, I would love to hear your opinions on this model and Kinetics in general. Well, I dug out the two Kinetics I own. Let's talk about them. Kinetics. Okay, for those of you who may not be familiar with what the Kinetic is, in the 90s, Seiko first came out with a watch model movement that they called AGS, Automatic Generating System. The idea being that you would have quartz accuracy, but you wouldn't have to worry about battery life because the watches have weights in them. And the weights, just like an automatic watch, provide power. As you move, the weight, you can't see it, of course, but the weight turns back and forth, and it runs a generator around and it charges the battery. It's a great idea. They have little buttons here to test how much power these things have. You push that down and you see that showed 30 minutes. That in theory is a full 6 months charge. The reason it shows a full 6 months charge is that I put this one on a kinetic charger, a Seiko kinetic charger, to get it up to full power. This one, I haven't done that. It's about 20 minutes. I charged this one a couple of weeks ago. I think it's an interesting technology. The problem is that if you wear one of these every day, well, you're going to be fine. It's never going to run out of power. It's going to be good for a long time. Most watch dudes I know do not wear their watches all the time, and unless you have a kinetic charger, which is like an electromagnetically powered like thing that you put this on, you push a button and it charges it wirelessly. Unless you have one of those, you're screwed, which makes them really tough. These are great watches for somebody who doesn't have a lot of watches or really likes the one Kinetic that they have and they can wear it. Seiko's official statement is that 30 seconds indicated is 6 months of charge, but I will tell you from this one, from when it was brand new, that 6 month charge drops to 1 month, which is when it only goes 20 seconds instead of 30, it'll drop to 1 month in a couple, 3 weeks. There's no way this thing is going to keep running 6 months, period. It just won't. You leave it for a month and a half or more, and it'll just be stopped. One way to get around these is you go in the back and you pull the weight so it doesn't charge anymore, and you replace the capacitor with just a standard watch battery. And then these become just basic quartz. I love this style, like this one, the SUN 019. It's really cool. What I wouldn't give. My big problem with this is how large it is. And like this one here, this is informally known as the BFK, Big Effing Kinetic. I wish what I wouldn't give for this exact watch, but instead of this behemoth, drop it down to like maybe 41 millimeters and have it be either a 7C46 movement, or if you're really feeling crazy, an automatic. God, that'd be a really cool watch. I love the lume color and the dial setup and sort of the 3D look of it. It's a great watch. I wish I could swap the movement out, basically. I really do. But they're good watches. I mean, but you have to know their limitations. Yeah, so if it's your only watch or one of your main watches and you love it, that's great. In fact, loving it is the number one thing. If you love it, awesome. It just, something to be aware of is the longevity of the capacitor and how much they go. For my money, the best eco drive around, actually the ones made by Citizen, though I know that Seiko uses their technology. Babak Shakiba. Hi, Spencer. First of all, that's a really cool hoodie. Talking about my red one. Thank you for doing the coconut oil experiment on a faded bezel so I don't have to. It seems to be working. Now time to wait and see if it will get darker and what will happen once you wash it. I think it already looks 100 times better than it did before, so we're on the right path. Well, let's talk about it. It's week 2 of that indicator ring in the coconut oil. So let's take a look. Okay, week 2. There it is. I don't think it's really gotten much better. It looks like it's about the same to me, actually. So, let's pull that out here. Trying to make sure I don't get coconut oil over my fingers because I don't really feel like smelling like surf wax today. Though I do miss surfing. I mean, it looks better, I think. But again, I don't know if this is the bacon grease effect of the oil seeping in and making it look more translucent or what. I don't know if it's going to stay. Wait, where'd the pip? Wasn't the pip there? Where'd the pip go? Well, I'll have to look for it. It's improved, but it's not perfect. But it's improved. The big question is will it last? Okay, so I don't think that this is really going to get a whole lot better. It's been 2 weeks in the oil. So what we are going to do now is we are going to try a yellow ring. That's original. So let's pull that out and put it in the, gosh darn it, coconut oil. So let's bring this out. Come on. Come on. Ugh, get out. Out. God. Okay, so. Look at that. I just touched it with coconut oil on my thing. That's that bacon grease effect you're talking about. Let's, here, I've got some coconut oil on this. Yeah, look at that. It might work better on the yellow ones simply because the white plastic is closer in tone to the black. Hey, that's already massively improved. Look at that, huh? The big question is, will it stay that way? Now, what if instead of using a vegetable oil, what if I used like a finishing oil, like a tongue oil, or a linseed oil, or something else like that? Maybe that would soak through, and once that dried, it would be extremely hard. But you can see that is already a big improvement just by putting oil in there. Now I guess what I should do is clean this and see if it goes away. But anyway, let's put this in here and we'll see how it looks next week. And we'll go from there. Okay, let's seal that up. So we'll see. I want to find another yellow one now because I have a few, and I want to try. I want to try, like, I think like linseed oil, something like that. It's a slow cure, but it's the kind of stuff you put on wood finish. And if that works, if linseed oil works, my only question though is because linseed oil tends to be slightly yellowish, will that tint it? But if that works, not only would it turn the thing yellow again, but when it dried, ooh, it's going to be bulletproof because linseed oil is very tough. It's a very tough finish. It would basically seal it off from being oxidized anymore, I think. Okay. Hi, Spencer, and maybe Sabrina. She read your question, so she says, hello. Thank you for the amazingly interesting videos. Really? I'm glad you're happy. Hope the fires are settling close to you. Yeah, they turned south and then we got all this snow, so, what are you going to do? Alua Akbar. My question for next mail call is, do you recommend any Seiko books, not service manuals? Many thanks, Neil. I'm not aware of any. I'm sure some exist. I've never seen one. I've never owned one or bought one. I'm sure that some exist. People have suggested that I write one, but I can barely find time to do the work I'm supposed to do, much less fiddling around with a book. But just to go back, there's nothing like reading through the Seiko Service Manual. They're just a source of fantastic information. So entertaining. So informative. They're just magnificent things to sit down and just go over on a quiet afternoon, just reading through. There's so much that you can learn. I don't know. That's my input. So sorry, Neil. I didn't really give you a good answer. I hope I'm going to get this name right. Lhasa Shao. Great video and watch. I got one too and want to ask you, what do you use to clear coat the dial? He's talking about the Citizen Gold Bullhead, the Brad Pitt. Not many things in my earlier life, professionally or personally, had much of bearing on anything I've done since. Almost everything I learned in school, including university, and in work professionally, almost nothing had any impact whatsoever on what I'm doing now. The only two things were my extensive childhood building plastic models and customer service, working in customer service. What I used to clear coat the dial with that one, I didn't want it to be glossy, but in all of these cases, everything I use is basically modeling supplies for building plastic models. In that particular case, I used, you can get a little tiny teeny aerosol spray can of testers. They make clear coat, they make dull coat, and like matte. And what's nice about those, and the fact that they're for models, is they go on extremely thin. They're for basically like the dull coat. The matte spray is for when you put on your decals and everything. The decals are going to be shiny, but the paint is going to be matte, and so it makes the decals stand out. You can spray this stuff, and it's really thin. It's super tight. It's not globby or blobby, and it dries, and it's like it's not even there. All of a sudden, everything is the same matte look, but it will hold it together. So that works actually very well. My great uncle's Omega 321, pre-Speedmaster, the dial was just in really bad shape because he did not take care of his things. All the clear coat on the dial was like patining to brown and peeling off like leaves peeling off of a sidewalk. after the fall. And so I very carefully use that stuff, very, very small amounts after masking off all the markers, enough just to basically to get all that loose stuff, because it was just loose, to sit back down, and you can't even see where the spray is, and the dial is now solid. So that's what I used. But it's like anything like this, there's a pretty long learning curve on how to push this stuff and make it work, how you expect it to work. So definitely get some junker dials, junker stuff, and play with it and see how it behaves before you start going ape on stuff. Rock the Cat Box. Again, great name. I was hoping you could provide a suggestion for my birth year watch, 1988. 6309s were gone by 1988. It's the last year of production for the excellent 7A watches, the analog quartz chronographs. They were made into 1988, and there's some just fantastic watches. That is the time when you can get also the 7C43 the 7C43 divers that look like the 7548 7000Fs, that kind of thing, or all black. They basically they have that look, but they're actually pretty cool looking. So instead of having metal hands, they've got black hands with the outline of the loom done in white. They're pretty cool. Or if you're really looking for something wacky, you can look for the 7C46 ashtray. There were two variants. There was the JDM variant, and then there was the American variant. JDM variant is titanium case, black dial, silver markers, that kind of stuff. The American one is steel frosted with gold accents, and they were both made at that time. They're both great watches. That's what I would look for. If I had to take one from 88, well, I've owned a couple ashtrays, and I ended up selling them. They sit on my wrist a little too big for me. I've owned a couple 7C43 200 meter divers, and they are cool. The crystals are really hard to find, but they're really cool. If I had to get one, I'd probably look at the 7C43 7010. That's what I'd look for. There you go. Let's see. Forbin Colossus. Hey, man. He is talking about 6R15s, and they're sort of their weird things. So have you concluded the lubrication blobbiness is why the 6R15, 4035s, etc. run so erratically? I think it's two things. Okay, so what we're talking about, just to back up, you may or may not be aware, there have been consistent accuracy and amplitude issues right out of the box with a lot of Seiko's more modern movements ever since they came out with the C-type balance, which is a different balance setup. What I found now, going through several of these, good number of these, this is a 6R15, is that the lubrication has been inconsistent and kind of weird looking. This watch was basically a 0 miles SARB 033. It had barely been worn. It ran like crap right out of the box, to the point that the original owner said, I don't even and we made a deal for it, and we swapped it out, and I got it here. I finally went through it. The thing I noticed, the first thing, was that the lubrication for the lower third wheel was like chunky, like it had stuff in it, which is really weird. But also, and this is a killer, is that the pallet fork arbor was lubricated top and bottom. You're never supposed to. Oh, not never. Very rarely is there a reason to lubricate the pallet fork pivots. I don't know of any subject upon which there's greater consensus among like professional watch guys. They're like, I was always taught, and these are like, master, master watchsmiths, 21s and stuff like this. And I was always taught never to lubricate the pallet fork pivots. and these were lubricated, and that can kill a ton of amplitude. I didn't see any other real issues, but the other issue with this was that, again, these balances, these C-type balances, they have a lot of ability to be adjusted, beat error, accuracy, but they also have, because the way that they're designed, which is that you have the studs are basically just held in place by this sort of fork deal. I think you can kind of see the two little brass things there. Yeah, you can't see it. Anyway, but they can, as a side effect of their design, they can move, they can twist, which changes where the hairspring sits under the balance. They can go in and out, which means the hairspring can start creaking over, which will eat up all kinds of amplitude. With this watch, it took a full service and a new old stock balance, basically, to bring this one back. But now that I did all that work, actually, this is great. And we know that it's got good numbers, and I have every confidence that this is a good watch. And I really like the fact that I thought to loom the little pip there on the sweep hand. I just think that's cool. So far, consistently, it's been lubrication. I would say lubrication and the balance issues. The rest of it is fine. Though, gosh, the keyless works are so complicated in these things. Not just one. It's not just it has not only a clutch wheel and a winding pinion, it's got like a second winding pinion to communicate from the stem to this sort of gear setup to wind the thing manually. It's a pretty wacky setup. Not simple. You can tell, I was thinking this, and you can tell when you're looking at one of those movements that Seiko did sort of a half rebuild, a half new design, in that they didn't want to just build it clean from scratch. They took an existing design and kind of figured out how to make it a hand winder, and it's a little kludgy as a result. Okay, and this next comment is about this watch, which, by the way, is on the website for sale, from Pre and Mystery. I'm going to do my best to not sound snarky about this stuff. I kind of take it personally, and I shouldn't, but whatever. So I have this watch up on the website, and a good portion of the price, in fact, the vast majority of it, is the cost of the full servicing and the replacement new old stock balance. If you took my servicing and stuff out of there, I'm really only asking about $150 for the watch. Vast majority of it is my labor. Anyway, Pre and Mystery. So expensive. Yes, it has been serviced, but for the same money, there are a bunch of great Swiss alternatives. That's true. You can buy great Swiss watches that will run beautifully, beautifully out of the box. Beautifully out of the box. Like, man, you get one of those, you get one of the new old stock glycines. Kraken, what are you doing? What? Ugh, I have to let Kraken in. Okay, she's in and safe. Okay, so to go back to this. Pre and Mystery. So expensive. Yes, it's been serviced for the same money, but there's a bunch of great Swiss alternatives. And talking about the second hand on the watch, the one I loomed, the second hand was designed like the olive stick thingies in a martini. No need to loom it. But it looks great, and it adds an extra level of functionality to the watch. Who cares? Anyway, it's not for everybody. It's a personal thing. Good luck with the sale, hoping for some MG videos. Well, I'll burn the MG thing later. The deal is this. I don't want to go too nuts on this. I do not discount my work. My work is valuable. My time is valuable. I don't have a lot of time, and it's spent doing this stuff. So, yeah, you can get a watch for... You could buy one of these Sarb 033s for a lot less than what I'm asking. But you're rolling the dice. If you really, really, really want a Sarb 033 that you can depend on, there's this watch. There are no mysteries. There's no questions. And this watch is under warranty for me. Oh, yeah, there's all kinds of other watches in there. Sure, absolutely. That you can go out and buy. If you're not set on buying a Sarb 033, then The world is full of watches. There are a billion watches. This is the only SARB 33 in the world that has been serviced by me. This is the only one. I don't discount my stuff for a few reasons. One, I take pride in my knowledge and my professionalism. I'm not, people have been writing me about this watch saying, oh, they think this should be a bargain watch. It needs to be cheap. Why? Why does it need to be cheap? So it has all this work that went into it. But the primary reason, not the primary reason, my work is valuable. My time is valuable. Also, a long time ago, I used to do what some people have suggested, which is to basically not account for my work and to discount my work. And what I found a couple of things were happening. People would buy an inexpensive watch for me that I had fully serviced. They would take the movement out and they would put their junk movement in and they'd mail it back to me. So that was one horrible thing. I also found this was the killer. There was this dude in New York City who was buying a ton of watches from me back when I used to haggle with myself before putting up any price. And he was taking my watches and putting them on his girlfriend's Etsy account, and selling them for 3 times what he had bought them for from me as serviced by me, and he was getting the money. He was getting the money. I was discounting my labor, and he was taking my discounted labor, and the money was moving to him. So, I don't have to sell anything. I sell stuff because it occurs to me to sell it. Not everybody's going to want to buy it. If you want a bargain SARB, there's buckets of these things out there that run like crap. And you can get one of those and say, hey, look, I saved all this money on this watch that keeps terrible time. Or you can have this one. In any case, so I understand I'm a little thin-skinned, but I think hopefully that might be understandable as to why. Let's see. Christian Motos. Hi, Spencer. I am a proud owner of the SARB 033, but I believe I have the same issue with the movement. It can be quite erratic, gaining a lot of time off wrist, gaining just a little time on. I'm sure it's not a big deal, but if I was going to get it looked at, I would much prefer sending it to you. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. The nice thing is you have it gone through. If you love the watch, if the watch is really something that really works for you, and people are super passionate about these SARBs. They really are super passionate about them. And if it's not running right, it takes all the fun out of it. I've avoided doing anything with this watch for a couple of years. I think I had this watch. And then I serviced it. I went through it, and I knew all the answers. I looked at everything it was doing, and I experienced, especially after I loomed the little pip there, I just think it's so cool. After I did that, I looked at it, I'm like, I really like this watch. So I've actually been wearing it. I'm very proud of it. Very proud of it. I love that loomed second hand. In the night, you can see the seconds ticking off, and it's just great. Andrew W. Hi, Andrew. Question for this week's video. I'm trying to source a jewel to sort out the canyon pinion port wear on my 7548. I believe a suitable jewel can be found on a 6309 or 6119 movement. Please, could you advise on where it would be in the movement? Would it be on the base plate? Cheers. Let's talk about it. Okay, 7548 center jewel. Okay, so whoops, wrong one. Here, this is a 754X main plate. They're all the same. You can see the hole right there. That right there. That's the hole where the center wheel goes through. This is the calendar side, so that's where you'd see the pinion, the canyon pinion. And this, it's just metal. And so you can even see, even at a glance, you can see that hole is slightly oval. Do you see it? Do you see how it's ovaled out? That's the problem. So it's slightly ovaled out. This is where the crown would be at 4 o'clock. You can see the oval is up this way, so if you pulled the stem and rocked it back and forth, the entire hand stack can go back and forth like this. As for the jewel, Seiko, thankfully, you don't even have to harvest it for one of these. They still make the jewel. You can order them. Like Jules Burrell has them. Anyway, but that is the jewel. right there. That center wheel jewel. The issue is that you can't just pull this out and put it in here. This has to be machined out and it has to be precise. Use a Zeitz tool to machine this out and make it right. Because if you get this and it's off center in some weird way, you can get all kinds of binding problems with the date driving wheel. It can be a real issue. You can also, if you don't know what you're doing, this is pretty thin brass. You can warp the main plate and then all the clearances for the train are off. Ask me how I know that. So that's, yes, this jewel's the same, 6,000, 6309, 6119, 6105, but also all the Dynie ones too, 7005, 7009, 7000, blah, 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 blah. All the same. But rather than stripping something out of an existing movement, you can just order this particular jewel because Seiko still supplies it. Anyway, that's the way you do it. I'm being remiss. I should put that part number up. I forgot to look for it. But the jewel is available. I know for a fact Jules Burrell has them because I've gotten some. I don't scavenge parts like that. I would, because it's so critical to the movement. If I'm putting in a jewel, I'm not going to put in a used jewel unless it's in excellent condition or I have no other alternative. Joseph Stewart. Hey Spencer, and again possibly Sabrina. She's upstairs. She read your comment. What batteries get your tick of approval when it comes to quartz watches? I've heard some horror stories of batteries leaking not long after being swapped out. Yeah, I've heard it and seen it. In particular, my mom had a Tag Heuer a few years ago that was destroyed by a battery leak. The battery has only been in there less than a year. Ooh, wow. I asked this because my 6923-7099 with the disco ball crystal, Sabrina coined term, has started doing the 3-second skip sweep. So battery change is imminent for this little beauty. Lots of love from Australia. Hope those fires are easing up. I want to go to Australia so badly. I've wanted to go to Australia since I was a teenager. Someday we're going to get down there. Sabrina wants to move to Australia, actually, and buy one of the catteries that's down there. You have the cat places. You can get cats out of the outback, out of the bush, and make sure they're not slaughtering the populations, but you're not killing them. She wants to move there and own an Australian cattery. I use Energizer silver oxide. Sony is good. Seiko's own branded batteries are good, but in terms of cost and reliability, I can't remember ever having a problem with Energizer. There are a couple other brands that I do know that other people use, but for me it's just Energizer. Again, also in part because I like rabbits. Last question. Eddie DeBeer. Awesome watch. Sorry, I don't remember what watch that is, but thank you. Honestly, I don't buy into this whole time grapher thing. I wear my watches and measure the time exactly every 24 hours, noting it on the app on my phone. If I had a time grapher, I would probably end up selling all 30 of my Seiko watches due to inconsistencies and beat errors. Yep, I am that OCD. I certainly understand what you're talking about. I get it. For me, the time grapher is useful, not so much for judging accuracy. I use it primarily, and it is irreplaceable for this, for being able to judge the health of a movement without even opening the watch. Because if you put it on the time grapher, you see the amplitude. And so the amplitude tells you what kind of condition that movement's in. The numbers do not lie. And for what I do, repairing and restoring watches and stuff like this, it's invaluable. So if I didn't have a time grapher, I wouldn't even be able to tell if I did a good job on a watch. So time graphers definitely have their place. I agree with you. This watch, this Sarb, it's running in the 250s and 260s. It's a little lower than I would have liked, but the accuracy is extremely flat, and it is keeping time to within a few seconds per day. It's really good. So if I were just judging on the accuracy, every 24 hours checking it, I'd be getting great numbers. The nice thing about the time grapher is I can tell you exactly what the health of this movement is just by looking at the numbers. And so I think that's valuable. Okay, well, that's it for questions. I've got a couple more things that I'm going to go over and talk. People had asked about the strap choice on this watch. Julie had asked about it specifically, and I'm pretty enthusiastic about these. And I also wanted to follow up on the Back to the Future watch because I have an update on it. So that's it. If so, we'll go through that, but after that's done, we'll be done. So let's go over there, and then Julie and a couple other people asked about my mystery flat vent strap. Well, it's a mystery no longer. 19 millimeters marked. These are made by Speidel. And Speidel has made these straps for a very long time. I like them a lot. They do make a 22 millimeter version. It's slightly different than this, but this is the 19 millimeter version. The only thing is that it takes thin spring bars, not the standard fatties. So what you need to do is get, there's versions of the spring bars you can get that are thin bodies with the fat tips. And if you have those, then you're good to go. It's almost everything. I love it. It's got the flat vent look, which I think is great, but it's slightly different in that the vents actually wrap around, which I think visually is neat. I wish I knew the material. If I had to guess, I'd say it might be vinyl. What I like about it is it's not grippy at all. It's not super stiff, but it's somewhat stiff. It's not even a bit sticky at all. And it looks really good. It's a very clean look. I think it's awesome. And they're cheap. They're like $6, these straps. And they're still available. I'm trying to actually find out if I can partner with Speidel to get these in bulk, but also to maybe work on one of my straps. One of the things I like about Speidel too is that they're the last American strap bracelet company, the last one standing, and they're an American icon, and the company went out of business, but it's been reacquired and is now back in and being made in its Pawtucket, Rhode Island plant. So I back it. Speidel. I love that 50 style logo. They've never changed it. I just think it's awesome. Stainless steel. Hong Kong. This must be an older one. Anyway, it's beautifully made, and it's got some nice little details on it, like the under curve on this, and it's a little thicker towards the top. These are nice and flexible. Yeah, this one's definitely old. You can see it's starting to crack there. I mean, this is old. This is probably from the 70s or the 80s. But I have more coming, and I'm going to test against them. Okay. And lastly, I'll follow up on the Back to the Future watch. So you've got time up here and date and everything, and then down below it has that. Okay, neat, right? Notice that the times are not the same. That's 12:12. That's 2:05. I just corrected this watch. The problem is that the way the buttons are, they stick out so far that when you click your hand back like this, you hit the reset buttons and you can start changing the time. So it's an unfortunate design choice that is going to be annoying. And frankly, I think it might be deadly to wearing the watch, because if you're constantly resetting the time and making it wrong, then yeah, like Sadie was wearing this and she had hit the reset button here. And so this time has been sitting there since 12:12, which is just stupid. 20 there. So the lower time is correct. The upper time is wrong because the reset got pushed in and it made it basically stop. At least the date is right. But anyway, design failure. And that's it. That's it. Only a few more days until the election, November 3rd. Please vote. I don't care who you vote for. I think it's important to be involved in our civic process. A lot of people over the centuries have fought in many different ways for us to have the right to vote. It is an insult to them to not take advantage of it. If you have a mail-in ballot, it's too late. Just find your closest drop box and take it in. This is going to be especially tough if you're in Texas because the Republicans are working as hard as possible to make it as hard as possible to vote. But do it. And if you can vote, man, go vote. Please go vote. Why not? I mean, we get something that almost no one gets. We have actual, relatively speaking, free and fair elections. Let's take part in it. We are dropping off our ballots today, and we're doing our thing, and we're waiting for Tuesday. That's it. You folks have a great weekend. Thank you so much for watching. Okay, bye-bye.